There was a lot that she offered up about her home life in this podcast. I know you're talking about that. A lot of it was with her guest. Her guest story was quite captivating, and we had about over 40 minutes of listening to, how she became a founder and everything she went through for Yale. But a lot of the little trinkets that were offered to us were about Meghan's home life. And I think we had here, she said she loves being a mum so much, it's her favourite thing, and she tells a little story about how Harry tells her that she needs to kind of relax and have a bath.
Yeah, she needs to go off, take some time for herself, maybe go and do a workout, maybe go and have a bath. She can't stop scrolling through her phone for photos of the children. It is her favourite job in the world. And I suppose this is the crux of this. What are we coming to this podcast for? Are we listening to Confessions of a Female Founder for business advice, or are we listening to it for nuggets of life from Montecito? And I think that's probably the challenge with it, because it's not really a business podcast, is it? It's more of a lifestyle chat, because it's very cosy. Yeah. Clearly these two women know each other. There's a lot of, oh, you're amazing, kind of, there's some fangirling going on in every episode.
This is 100% what I was going to ask. I mean, Cameron, do you have an answer to that? I mean, or you have a point of view on that. Is this a business podcast? Is it masquerading as a business podcast, but really it's just a show for Meghan to, talk more about her life?
Well, I think it's Meghan trying to find a niche, and I don't think she's quite got there yet. And what we do know, of course, is Meghan wants to be an entrepreneur. In fact, she says she's not an influencer. She wants to be a businesswoman. And what I find from watching or listening to the episodes is it's almost like her trying to get advice sometimes from these very successful multi-billion-dollar business women. And it's almost like Meghan you can tell she genuinely has a passion for it and is very excited to speak to these amazingly influential and successful women, and perhaps hoping it's going to rub off on her a little bit.
Well, there's one line in it where she talks about, if you're out there setting up a business and you want to get some support for it, don't go asking for money, go asking for advice, and then you're more likely to get the money. But I do think, these are two women, they're talking about business. Interestingly, with Reshma Saujani, I think her journey is one that Meghan would have loved to have had, because, she actually ran for Congress. She was supported by the singer John Legend. She wasn't successful, but we know that Meghan had political aspirations. And Reshma Saujani's business, Girls Who Code, her non-profit, has been hugely successful. So I think there's definitely some kind of aspiration there from Meghan to learn from her, but how much we actually learn from these podcasts is
one thing I think that I think I learned from it is that I think this is one of the most important podcasts, or one of the most important times I've heard her talking, because I get your thoughts on this. She really lays out that she is a businesswoman and a working mother. It seems that this now seems to be the direction that she's going, and that's what this whole podcast was about, is about juggling it all, doing it from my home, and as you rightly pointed out, that she has the two children ill upstairs and she's still having to work downstairs in their vast mansion. That must be really tough, but she seems to be laying out her brand, I think, more. Well,
yes, and I think that's the point. Reshma had to work incredibly hard to get to where she was. She didn't have an $11 million mansion in Montecito. She hadn't married a prince of the realm. And I think something that perhaps some people are going to criticise Meghan for is the fact that, yes, she is clearly a working mother, and yes, she is starting to launch a business, but she has a lot of support behind her. She has millions of pounds, plus the house, plus Prince Harry's support. So naturally, it is going to be easier for her in a startup business scenario than it has been for Reshma and some of the other people that she is speaking to on this podcast.
Now, I will ask your opinion on whether you enjoyed the podcast, but have you seen the reviews? So we've been through the reviews in the past where we were for Meghan's Netflix show, which have not been particularly kind to her, but she's also getting some very poor reviews. It's not going down very well. I think it's not exactly top of the charts on either Spotify or Apple at the moment.
It was number 10 on Spotify, but that was way lower than Archetypes, which went in at the top. Some of the reviews last week for the first episode were 1-star reviews.
I've got some of them here. They've called it a vapid lessons in self-love. Sycophantic interview podcast is stomach churning. That's from The Guardian. That's quite left-leaning.
Yeah.
It is And then the Telegraphs call it an inane stream of mindless aphorisms with no confessions or secrets.
There are a lot of business buzzwords and these kind of inspirational quotes thrown out there during it. And I think that's why, maybe that's as sort of hardened Brits listening to it. Maybe there's a cultural difference here as well. But that's where it's lacking, is that real punch and that real kind of getting actually to the nuts and bolts of it. I think this guest, Reshma, does try to do that, and her story is really interesting. But I think your point, Cameron, that Meghan doesn't have that backstory in the sense of really scrapping to try and build this business from scratch, because she's building this business from a huge platform. And that's why she's got the podcast. That's why she's got the Netflix series, because she is the Duchess of Sussex.
And that's why also her As Ever products have sold out of their first batch. And it's interesting, the reviews have been pretty scathing of the podcast, but also of her Netflix series as well. Very similar situation in terms of, what is the USP here? Does it actually have a point to this? Or is it just because she is Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, people are watching it? And it's similar, although it was number 10 on Spotify, this podcast. It was also in her Netflix series was also in the top 10, her recent lifestyle series as well. So although the reviews are bad, people are still watching it. So the question is going to be, are people watching it because they love to hate it, or do they genuinely enjoy watching it or listening?
So despite the poor reviews, and despite not topping the charts like Archetypes did, it's not time for Meghan to throw in the towel yet then. There's still more to come.
Well, it's still generating headlines. We're still talking about it. The newspapers are still writing about it. And I suppose, the worst thing could be it being greeted with silence and just completely ignored.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, it is doing something. And yes, sometimes it is described as vapid, but this is about women talking about setting up their businesses. And so I suppose that juggling home life and the founding of the business is going to come up. And it isn't only going to be about the numbers and the spreadsheets. For example, they want to talk about the challenges.
And the production company, of course, as well, Lemonada Media, a female-founded company. So they are going to have a, kind of an emotional investment in this kind of podcast working out. And as you say, Matt, people are still watching it, aren't they, or listening to the podcast. So it is good publicity for them in that sense. Whether it gets commissioned for season 2, we'll have to wait and see.
What I would like to see is it being less about Friends and the less of the chumminess, which is a little bit alienating to listeners, and more about her getting guests in her own right and because they want to appear on that podcast.
It's very US focused. I think all her guests are mainly based in America so far, and so they were on the Netflix show. But I think the American media have mainly ignored it. I mean, we have viewers on the show, many from America. I'd like to hear their thoughts. They can post on YouTube channel whether it is getting much coverage over there. But I'm led to believe that it's not really being picked up by the American media, which surely would be her target if she was moving into that sphere.
Yeah, 100%.
Does that suggest then that the British audience, are very much loving to hate Meghan and perhaps by extension Harry, and the US just don't care anymore?
Well, that may be the direction I'm pushing this.
Yeah.
And that's the whole direction of the Vanity Fair piece, which was, really damaging for them, wasn't it? Which was that, you can forget Britain because we know that Britain was going to give them a tough time and would likely greet this with a fairly cynical reaction. But actually, if America isn't buying into this brand, then they've got a problem.